Life is not only black and white. Somewhere in the grey lies the truth. Where perspectives collide and stories connect. Welcome to the Black, White and Grey podcast. Let's connect. How you doing, guys?
Good.
Very well.
Yes. So, I mean, last episode we spoke a bit about friends and how that connects with mental health and how they can support you, you know. And I was kind of having a thought about it, and I was thinking, I've had a few conversations with friends recently, and you can tell that mental health is an issue, but I think there's still a stigma about getting help, right? Or in terms of, like, even with wellness in general.
Yeah.
And we were saying that going to therapy isn't a point of shame, it's a point of strength.
Yeah.
So I personally have been to therapy a long time ago when I was like 17, and I was just feeling not myself, you know.
Yeah.
I'd say overall I'm quite a chatty person, quite sociable, and generally quite well-tempered, as in, like, patient. And then I remember a friend of mine, poor friend, we were at my house, and he said, "Oh, Brendan, someone's at the door," and I just blew up on him for no reason. I was like, I swore at him. I was like, "Then go get it. Why are you even telling me? Like, what is going on?"
I mean, I do that every day.
Yeah, I was like,
with people.
I was like, dude, why are you even telling me? Because he was at my house every week, right? I was like, it's basically your house. Just go. And I was like, oh, that was a bit harsh. And I could see him taken back. He was like, he's never seen me like that.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, sorry, yeah, I'll go get it. And obviously I just felt so bad. I was like, what, Brendan, what's wrong with you? And at that point I was thinking, and obviously there's things building up to that. It wasn't just that one thing. And I was like, okay, I'm really not feeling right. I wasn't necessarily feeling down as such, or like what I would typically associate with something depressive or poor mental health, but I just felt something wasn't me. And at that point I thought, you know what, time to speak to someone.
Well, at 17?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Oh, thank you.
So you pulled yourself, you looked at yourself in the process and said to yourself, something's not right and I need to go and speak to somebody else, a therapist. At
Absolutely.
17?
Yeah.
That's mad.
And
that is crazy.
I was very fortunate that at the time my college was offering free therapy, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, if I'm ever going to take advantage of this, it's now. And I remember going, and I think people think therapy is people telling you how to fix yourself up, but it's not. It's more having someone to listen and soundboard off. And they kind of lead you to figure out yourself, kind of thing, right? Because there's no wrong or right answer.
No.
But having someone with a complete unbiased opinion and someone that doesn't know you, because everyone that knows me will be like, oh, Brendan, you've got nothing to worry about, you're such a nice guy, blah, blah, blah. I'll be like, okay, yeah, but that doesn't help me.
Yeah.
No.
Like, there's being a nice guy, but then there's also being, as I said, I've got a strong belief everyone can be nice for 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But if I'm not feeling myself 100% of the time, or not 100%, but like most of the time,
Yeah.
then there's something off.
But I think as well with your one, it was also a lot of built up pressures from just life itself.
Absolutely.
That you didn't account for.
Yes, I just got into my first relationship, like first ever long-term relationship, and there's a few things that I just wasn't prepared to deal with, as in, like, I wasn't well equipped enough to, like, handle certain situations. I won't go into it too much, but it's like, you know, that you get those pangs of jealousy and those pangs of, like, insecurity at those times. You're in your first relationship, you're like, oh, it's like everyone's out to get you, right?
Yeah.
You're like, oh, everyone. So it's just like, I felt like there was that, and then there was obviously, I was doing a lot of dancing as well as my performing and stuff like that, and I was still doing like maths and physics A level alongside my BTEC.
It's a lot of pressure.
It's just a lot, right?
Yeah, it's a lot
I was having
of
to do
stuff.
physics on the weekends. I was like, well, this is what is going on.
You practically got no time
to
decompress.
Exactly. So, funny enough, the time I felt like that again recently was when we spoke about it in the last episode, and I was like, and that's the only time. These are the two times. Well, I felt it across my life every now and then, but these are the two times where I felt it hard enough that I can't pull myself out.
Question though, see, like between the first and the second time, like that disparity, was you better equipped the second time?
100%. And also, I think I am mature enough now to be able to reach out to people that I think would be able to help and not feel any sort of certain type of way and have no shame about that. So as I reached out to Anna.
Yeah.
I said, Anna, you've done all this in terms of like what I'm going through now. You've been through it. There is a slight difference because Anna is a workaholic, right?
Yeah.
I do enjoy it.
And I don't get me wrong, I love working, but then there's a point where I was like, okay, this is a lot. Like,
Well,
just a lot.
It's different when you attach a holic to the end of anything. It's like that ceases to be an enjoyment and starts being a coping mechanism.
It is. I think it's driven by trauma anyway, the reason why I work so hard. And I think when I went through therapy as well in around 2021, and I think who inspired me to do it was Edward at the time, because he used to be my sounding board. He used to be my person to talk about lots of things, and we went through a stage where we didn't see each other for years, but we used to speak on the phone every so often. And I think I was able to sort of decipher, okay, I need to go to therapy, and I need to be able to understand myself. I need to understand why I work so hard, why I sort of have instances where I'm really low and then I'm really high, and why do I do certain things? And it was a sign of strength. That therapist was American, someone that I didn't know, and she, within the first session, she was just like, you are this, that. And I was like, am I? You know, like when you have no sense of,
she showed you
you don't know you.
Yep.
You do think you go through the motion through the years, and
you have no idea.
You have no idea who you are.
It's interesting to think that life is like happening to you, and you're not playing your part in the dynamic that keeps playing out.
That's because a lot of people either live in the past or the future, right? They never live in the present. Yeah. So you're not living in the now, and because there is no future and the past is already gone.
It's so funny we talk about that, because I was talking to my auntie on the way here today, and I was talking about just kind of New Year's resolutions, like future and past, about how, you know, we speak about reflect on the past and just kind of look into the future. And she was like, within yoga, you kind of think about just being in the present. Yeah. And kind of we've all spoken about it in our own conversations about how we flow, and being in the present has helped us so much become who we are today.
But you're set up for failure on that mechanism from the day dot, right? There's no kid that you speak to who doesn't want to be a bigger, older kid. I speak to my 10-year-old nephew. He wants to be the 13-year-old version of himself because they have cool things. They're bigger, they're stronger, they're faster, whatever. So it's like, until you've kind of lived a certain amount of life, you need a certain amount of history to kind of dwell on the history and then realise you shouldn't dwell on the history. You need a certain amount of the future. And to your point, like, I think with people being traumatised, a big solution of that is your imagination grows to kind of save you, and your ego kind of fills in the gaps. So you go, if life can be that bad, then it makes sense that it can be that good on the opposite side. So I have to believe this almost to pull myself out of the hole.
Yes.
And then so you're kind of trading that misery and those unhealed wounds on this salvation point, which may or may not ever happen. And I think a lot of people kind of do make it happen. A lot of people don't make it happen. But it's interesting to kind of, I guess the danger is that you can therapize your way out of that sort of misguided ambition that writes the checks and gets you to the place that was spectacularly ambitious. But the point is you should never get to that spectacular place and then still be dissatisfied because it was never the solution.
But I think that's twofold as well. I think you go to really early infancy, those children don't dream about the future. They don't have no concept of the future. They live in the present. They live in the now. Any babies 0 to say 6, everything's now. The demand is now. They wake up at whatever time in the morning and it's now. I need your energy now.
Give me food.
Right, they're not thinking about that beating that they got yesterday, or when they run into the radiator and hit their head. They're not thinking about yesterday's pain, and they're not thinking about tomorrow's future. They're thinking about the now. I think the concept of the older kid syndrome, I think that's drummed in through society, through parenting, and through all of those concepts, and through TV. And I think it's the programming that shapes the reality.
I get that, because it's like, you know, when you're kids, your parents are like, oh, well, when you're older, you can do this. Yes. When you're
Yes.
Be empowered.
Yeah, when you're like Uncle Jonathan, you know, you can go watch 18 movies.
Yes.
You know,
you're allowed to do it then.
You're allowed to do it then. And then kids always think, oh, so for me, it was driving. I was like, oh, wicked. I can't wait to be 17, 18 so I can drive.
Yes.
Because that's my thing, right? And don't get me wrong, still love driving.
Still love it, yeah.
You know, but at the same time, it's like, you're right. I think it's ingrained in you not because it's like, not purposefully.
Yes.
But as a kid, all the things you want, right?
Yeah.
Just feel that little bit out of reach.
Correct, yes.
It's never like, I want to be 30.
Yeah.
That's
old.
You see like small kids pushing like toy babies around in a pram, and you're like 4 and you've got like a little baby in a pram. You're doing what adults do to sort of, again, because they sort of try and simulate us to, as part of the learning. So, it's like this sponge mentality, but also, as you say, I think it's like an incremental. I think a lot of well-being and mental health is actually you'll be empowered when you have $1 million, when you have a home, when you have this. And so
Correct.
it's really seductive. And as you say, I think we're getting sold a lot of solutions almost to a lot of problems we do and don't have.
It's really interesting because I know a lot of people that are doing very well in life.
Yeah.
But they're never doing as well as they want to be doing.
Correct.
Right? So I'm guilty of it myself. So when I started my business last year,
Yeah.
I started thinking about, okay, you get one client, right? And then at first that one client feels really great.
Yeah.
And then the second client, you're like, okay, cool, got a second one. Third one comes on, oh, okay. And you stop celebrating because you're like, it's just another client. Not being rude.
It then becomes work.
It becomes work, right?
Yeah.
So then, it's funny, I was with my business partner, we sat down, we had our first business dinner to celebrate everything like last week. After 6 months of doing this.
Right.
Not that I think 6 months is a long amount of time, but I was thinking, we really do, and I'm guilty because I've told people that I know that are doing really well, making more money than we could have ever imagined as kids, and I can see how unhappy they are. And I'm like, dude, you need to celebrate the little wins as well as the big. Like, it's got to be incremental, right? You can't just think of it's $1 million or nothing, or £1 million or nothing. It's got to be.
But I think also the trick that nobody tells you is do what you love. And I think a lot of people they're not doing what they love, they're doing what they feel they have to get to that magic figure. Yeah, that position in life.
But do you think do what you love? I mean, there's sort of like a self-actualization loop that has to take place, right? As in we go through all these kind of gears and wheels that possibly of our own selection, a lot of them aren't. Did I choose the sports I got offered at school? Well, I didn't even know what they were until I started playing them, right?
Yeah.
So they're a good proxy for I like running around with a ball. But it's what was my train of thought there? It was
What's it about the workload and what you've got to do to get there and stuff like that.
Do you feel like there's a sort of build up? Because I feel when I read about people committing suicide, and I've read loads of books about when millionaires make it, when people are at the top of their career, and then you are there, you sort of there's this build up. I'm working this hard. Once I get this big client, once I get this big deal, once I get this, I'm gonna be happy. I'm gonna be happy. I'm gonna be happy. And you get it.
But what was the sacrifice?
And then
right?
and you're thinking, but nothing else changed.
You didn't change,
you haven't,
right? It's
like, well,
that was my point about love. Actually, was you need to kind of go on this self-actualization loop to really understand from ground zero what you connect with. And that takes a while to kind of make the wrong choices, build up a pile of stones and call that a life and go, this looks great, feels great, but something's wrong. And then you take them down and then kind of go through a therapeutic process of searching internally. I think you then get to a point where you kind of excavate too deep. You're asking too many questions of too many things that can never be answered, that you kind of almost get into just thinking and never feeling. Yeah,
but that's what I'm saying. I think, again, down to the programming from growing up, we are taught almost to disconnect with how we feel. So we're taught to see it, not feel it. So anything we see, that's the danger, but you should be able to feel the danger. There's times when we've all felt something and thought, I'm doing something else instead, and we avoided the problem.
Seemed like a gut instinct.
It's a gut instinct. And it's if you go with feeling first, which is what we discussed in one of our other podcasts, we all found happiness within just feeling.
But you got to be bang on the money for authenticity to calibrate and constantly go, I know what my gut feeling will do in this situation, good and bad. Like, you need to be connected and be good at not losing that connection, because any falter or any manipulation by the outside world, you're going to quickly drift off that through.
Basically, we're reprogramming all the bad things. Well, I say the bad things, all the things that we were taught. And that's what you're doing. You're recalibrating who you are as a person and searching deeper within, which is what you was alluding to find out who you are.
Yeah.
As opposed to who the world expects you to be.
Well, and in a previous episode, you've almost alluded, well, you didn't allude, you said that you had to delete things from your life, people,
Yeah.
to actually get back to that gut feeling. Your gut feeling was that this person who's got into your life is actually wrong for you.
Yeah.
And that's a tough decision, because you're right. If anybody goes, "What are you doing this to me for? Like, I can't, what happened?" You're going to feel guilt as well. If you don't really know yourself, all the emotions associated with you being a bad person to somebody else and not knowing your own boundaries, that'll seep in. And that's so difficult to get right in your teens and your 20s.
And I think one of the key things that people don't factor in is rest.
Yes, I was saying that to Brendan. You have to take a day.
You can say that.
I take a
of
Sunday.
all people.
Mate,
Sundays.
I spoke to this woman
Sundays.
here earlier December.
Sundays were in
and
the
she
podcast
was,
studio.
She was like, "No, I'm all right, but I'm working. I'm all right. I'm working." I'm like, "Just go away and breathe." She's
Yeah.
like, "You know what? You're right. I'm gonna do it." Done it. She come back 100 miles an hour.
A sleep pod where she's resting at like 100 miles an hour to like optimize.
But yeah, no rest.
You have to rest. I think there's a day that you need to. I tend to do on Sundays, rest. But I don't really. I spend that day just thinking.
Thinking.
I think about, it's just
When
reflecting on, meditating on like what's next and how I'm going to be able to do it. And then if I'm really, really tired, I watch something like really stupid TV that you don't need to.
Trash
Brain
TV.
dead
Really
TV.
trash.
I love trash
like,
TV.
Yeah, like really trashy,
We're
because
not
it's
gonna
the only
name
way
their
that I can like
programs.
completely switch off. Because if I'm going to say I'm going to read a book, I'm like, there's no way my brain capacity cannot do it anymore.
Yeah, because you're full.
But there's also like people that I think Alex Hormozy is Hormozy? Is that his name?
Hormozy,
Yeah.
He says that whenever he's really exhausted, he also a workaholic, but he's just watched Netflix for a couple of days, so that then gets you back to reset.
Yeah, but at some point that can't help you. That's gonna lead you into a breakdown at some point, because you're subconsciously filling up that bank of information too in that brain, in that area. At some point, you have to do nothing. Go for a walk.
So yeah, but when we talk about this, and obviously you said that you got to do what you love, right?
Yeah.
I've been there, and I'm not sure I completely agree, because I feel like sometimes doing what you love should just be doing what you love. It's nothing to do with your career, nothing to do with what you do to make money, nothing to do with
It's
anything.
like joy.
It's got to be just pure joy. So
Pure
music
joy.
for me, which we've discussed briefly before, music for me is that, right?
Yeah.
It's just what I do to unwind, what I do to,
It's your hobby, so
escape,
to speak.
yeah, and enjoy, But then as soon as I started doing it for work, it stopped becoming that, and then you have to find something else, which was gym for me. But then,
Yeah.
and then every single one of those things, if you bring work into it, it then becomes
Yeah.
work to a certain extent. I'm sure a lot of people do what they love and still love it. I'm not saying I still didn't love music, but I think there's also a point to say, I was watching a YouTuber, and she had a cooking channel, and it was always her dream to be like cooking full time as like to make money.
Yeah.
And then she was like, I don't want to sound spoiled, and I do love what I do, because sometimes I'm jealous about the people that can have a day job and do their 9 to 5 and
That's
then have that purely as an escape.
Is that also
Maybe
the pressures?
switch off as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is that also the pressures of the world that we live in for financial, just to survive?
Well,
really?
absolutely, because obviously that means your love becomes your
bread,
lifeline,
yeah,
your bread.
lifeline, your
Yeah.
breadline, yeah.
Well, it's weird, isn't it? As soon as you digitize something, let's say with food, like I think probably part of the satisfaction of cooking good food on like a very human level is the enjoyment and the provision to other people and the kind of collectivization.
Company, yeah.
By the time you're digitizing it, nobody's tasting the food, you're just photographing it, and then you're pumping out content around it. It's almost so abstracted from like the actual human experience.
Facts.
And I think a lot of the things that seem to upset us, even with the successes, like your brain doesn't actually know the value of $1 million. And even if it did, $1 million in the 80s is not $1 million now.
Correct.
And yet we still tell ourselves, I'm a millionaire. It's like, well, you've got people who are now worth like 420 billion. There was none of them,
Yeah, in
you
the
know,
80s,
for
yeah.
20, 30 years ago.
That's
So
right.
the whole thing's getting skewed. And I don't know if there's enough meaningful discussion or even, the problem is you can be successful and people don't have any sympathy for you. What's the matter with your life? You've got X. You're fine. You've got nice things. It's like, and then you kind of feel more alone. You've almost made yourself alone because of your success. Because the better you do, the more isolated you're becoming. The more anybody individuates, essentially, the more at risk of being alone you become.
Correct, yeah.
And the more you probably realise you need people, but to respect them and allow them to be them too, but in your individuality.
It is dangerous. I mean, one of my friends, when we was both journalists doing sports, 2009, this was my first trip away from the UK, my friends. It was just me and him. And we were walking back from the stadium. This was when Usain Bolt broke the world record. So we were walking back from the stadium, but we were staying in 2 different apartments. So then there was that, we were just strolling, and I'm like, it's so quiet. We're in the middle of Berlin. It's my first like real trip away, like, and then we're just strolling, and it's quiet. It's about 1 a.m, and I'm like, this world, after going back and forth for days on my own, I'm like, it's sad out here, man. Like, is this what being a journalist is? And he said to me, somebody told him that the job of a journalist, his first ever mentor told him, the job of a journalist is a lonely road, because all that matters at the end of the day is you and your opinion, and that's it. And you're literally spending 90% of the time isolated in your own thoughts just to deliver a message to the world.
Well, the more unique your opinion, presumably the better journalist you become. So you have to be less like everybody else.
Right. So then, and that's what happens. So I think all of those factors that we're alluding to, they also cause the mental health troubles that people have. And then there's relationships on top of that with partners and other people loading their traumas on you as well, right?
Yep.
And that's a whole nother process that you've got to go through.
Which is, yeah, it's a wild thing with that as well, because I think when I was younger, you always want to help people, right? And in doing so, you listen to everyone's problems. And I remember my mentor at the time, he said, Brendan, you can listen, but you can't take it on.
Yeah.
He said, you can listen and be there as a support, but you can't take it on, because if you keep taking it on, that really affects your own mental health, your own self, you know. He said it's got to be sympathy, not empathy.
Yeah.
Basically, right? In terms of like, you got to be sympathetic and be there to be, oh, okay, that's horrible, but not there like you can't feel it every time, because that means you. He said, Brendan, what you're doing is you're taking on their troubles. They've offloaded. They're going away from your conversation happy because they've managed to get it off all their chest, right?
Is that right, though? Should they be offloading onto you?
No, exactly. That's
It occurs, doesn't it, with friendships?
I don't know.
But then...
Talk to a therapist.
Yeah, but
then, obviously, for me, like, I reached out to Anna, right? I've spoken to therapists, but then even when I was going through, I was like, who's been through this?
Yeah.
So that might
be...
But that's a common... That what you've done is find somebody who can help that matter, who will also be able to understand it without taking it on. So that's different to just dumping it on a friend without the experience.
The wisdom of experience to say, I can help to a certain degree. And somebody who's older than you often will have compressed down the amount of empathy they give away.
Correct. Yeah. So I'm also in the stage where I've compressed down how much empathy I can give away, because my mentor at the time said, Brendan, if you keep doing this, you take on all of this crap, and like you don't get to offload it.
Well, imagine if you empathise fully with like a 4-year-old kid, like they're just full of emotion, and if every time they expressed any emotion, you were in the trenches with them, going, "Oh my God, I understand your Play-Doh's falling."
Right? Some parents do that.
Some parents do
that. Sure, but you're never going to make the kid feel safe or secure by sharing the same experience. They'll be like, "What is going on?"
You're giving them the trauma, right? And that's part of the programming that we're talking about.
Yeah, true.
Some parents do that. There is some single parents, females that I know, that have a child, but they treat the child like he's an adult, like he's the alternative partner. So he gets the dumping of the emotion. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
that happened.
I can't really mention it because I'm going to get blasted.
No, you don't need to. Stay safe.
But I know parents like that.
Yeah, it happens. And like, and you see those kids who come through that, growing up simultaneously being like incredibly wise and grown up, but almost never really knowing themselves. In some ways, they're really like immature because they've not got to feel their own feelings. In some ways, they're like super aware and focused and like can therapize things because they've basically been a partner with their parent, but in a non-romantic.
But if you think about it, some of the young people that have been in trouble with the law through knife crime and stuff like that, they are products of that environment where they are the adult from really young. So they are responsible for bringing the money into the house.
But do you specifically mean like the man of the house type role?
Yeah, the man of the house type
That's slightly different, right? Because I think obviously what we were talking about before was parenting and how that affects, but when you're put into a situation like that, you don't have a choice, right? In a lot of the time.
No, but the parents shouldn't be putting you in that situation to make you the man of the house at such a young age.
Depends if your parents are still there.
That's a whole nother ball game.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I'm talking about the
That's
single
true.
parent families that the mum or dad is still present, and then they're bringing up the child, but they're putting the
I
demand
see what you're
on the
saying. So
child.
like, say if it's a single mum, and then you're
Yeah.
putting their son as the man of the house.
Yeah.
It's so
yeah.
difficult though, isn't it? Because you're like, what intervention would you give when? And ideally, what you'd say is to parents before they become parents, be super careful about the decisions you make, because you want to make sure you can provide and be as stable as possible. Because if it falls apart, unless you effectively co-parent, etc., if it falls apart, you run the risk of this playing out. But then they've probably come from households which, could have broken apart, could have made them think at 24, actually you're older than you are, and therefore it was a good time to have a kid. And you go, look, you can wait till you're in your 30s or whatever. But it's so hard to start breaking those chains because...
Yeah, but then the flip side of that is there's also the positive element where you could have a child from really young, 17, 18. Everybody's told you it's not that, like one of my friends. But his daughter's gone on to be a singer, and she's getting paid and she's doing what she's doing as a singer. Like, she's been on TV and she's doing her thing. And he was told at 18, don't do that. But then he got the flip side of it. So there is no real
There's no right or wrong answer.
I just think that, like, even in that position, I think parents need to be a little bit more careful in how they're displaying the information or projecting onto their children, to know the consequences that it can go left or right with that process. And then there's also a community as well of people that can help for the parent and the child. And that's another thing that we don't really think about with mental wellness. It's the community, which is why you alluded to speaking to Anna to help you. She's part of the community that helped you ground yourself when you needed it.
I mean, if I'm honest, things like doing this, like our podcast here, is some form of therapy for me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So for me, being able to come here and be able to speak to everyone and talk about everyone's experiences in all walks of life, and as you said, everyone in this room has had their own unique experiences and will have more experience in certain places than I will.
Yeah.
And actually, in this case, you guys probably all have more experience than I do in general, right?
Because we're old.
Purely because of life experience, not because
you're old. But I don't even know if that's true, right? Because the amount of situations you've ended up in, like a fairly elite level of performance pressure.
Facts.
That is actually, you're younger than us, but at the same time, like, I had that with rugby. I haven't had it with other things. You've had it with like 3 things that I can name. And it's like, each time you're in that environment, there's a lot of pressure that comes with it. And, some people are allowed to just be good at sports. Some people are just allowed to be good at academics.
Like team stuff.
Piled in with all of it.
Yeah.
Spotlight's on you.
Yeah.
I was
such a young age.
never good at team sport, I'll be honest. That's the one thing I was never good at, team sport.
But you're good at dancing, singing,
Solo.
academics.
He's a solo man. He's not a good team player, is he?
I was just never as good at it. Maybe it's just the sports that were team sports at the time I was just not equipped for, like rugby.
Yeah.
I'm a bit too small. Well, not too small, but I wasn't really a fan of getting hurt, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So rugby was just never really my sport. I was just so funny. I was at school and they forced me to play rugby. They're like, "Yeah, you're good at this." I was like, "Oh yeah, okay, I get that. I can be good at something. It doesn't mean I want to do it."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Yeah, but at this school, sports is number one." And I was like, "Yeah, but I'm dancing." And they're like, "Yeah, we don't care."
Yeah, but that's, you see that pressure, because it is pressure, right? You're being told that this is what you're good at, go and achieve that, and almost replacing your dream and making it
someone else's dream, yeah.
and making it somebody else's dream. But again, that's like what we're saying with the parent. You're getting dumped information to go and do something that's not you because it's somebody else's dream.
Because I the way I see it, and I'm not a parent, right? And I think I'm the only one in the room that's not a parent, right? So I would never quite understand it, but I think what a lot of parents will do is obviously try to give their kids what they didn't have.
Yeah.
Or in some cases, what they did have. So for me, I've been very lucky to have 2 amazing parents, right? So for my child, what I'd want to do in the future is be able to give them what I got, and I received a lot of support in life, and I'm, in terms of both mental support and moral support, and obviously financial as well, to do what I do, right?
Yeah.
So I've been very fortunate. So for me, I'd want to be able to give my kids what I got and more.
But there's kind of a crazy blueprint on that one at the moment, which I'm realising, right? Which is like, it's like, no, I don't expect parents to do anything else than what they're doing, just to be clear, but they'll go, shit, VAT's just slapped 20% on the school fees, but I've got to get my kid to this school. Great, to do what? Do a bunch of exams, get to a university, great, and then do what? to do whatever they want to do. I mean, all I can say now is that there's so many ways to self-educate and show a kid how to empower themselves to find stuff, which we didn't have in our generation. 2, there's going to be like another 20 years of AI development by the time that some of the kids of my friends' era, they're doing PhD level research in AI at the moment. In 20 years' time in ChatGPT model 45 plus or whatever. It's like, if you think you're going to follow the blueprint from the 90s, get them to get their UCAS points, go to university, come out and find that space. What I want is my kid to be dynamic. And I think it leaves room for a new school of parenting that seeks to understand the individual, reduce the burden of misguidedness, trauma, and increase the amount of effective self-directed curiosity and learning, and almost allow them to build themselves up as a picture of their own self-identity rather than going, get your grades, I don't distrust the systems, but I certainly, from my own education, I don't believe in just going through the system and suddenly getting spat out the other side and going, there's a job for me and I understand it. Because I graduated into the financial crisis, right? So all the jobs that were on the table were suddenly off the table, having been sort of almost promised to you as like a rite of passage by just getting your grades. So I think there's a temptation to go, well, I had this and had these stability factors, but I think staying light on our feet and adapting to how we're seeing the cards. Somebody also made a good point to me, right, which is we're potentially going to have a much more active pair of parents. If you speak to some of the men of a generation before, they kind of go, well, I saw my kid when I was back from the office and I may have changed a few nappies, but we may have a generation where men are a lot more present in very different roles than they have historically, and it'd be really interesting to see what effect that has on kids for better and worse, right? As in, maybe it doesn't work so well, maybe it does work way better, and so there's going to be this sort of dynamic situation which I think will throw up a whole load of other.
And there's going to be a lot of internet doctors with all the information that this is how you treat a child if the child's crying for too long.
The internet, I think, is double-edged sword, right?
Right.
It's great and it's awful. Like as I said, I've been seeing these videos like, you got to respect your child. I was like, okay, I get it, but at the same time, they know nothing. They are 2 years old, 3 years old. What life experience? Why would you give them the same level of respect that you've got for people of your own peers when they've got none of the life experience to deserve that? Not deserve it, but they don't know anything, right? So I can't respect my child in the same way that I would respect my peers or my partner, for example. There's got to be a line of, as you said before, you are still the parent figure, you are still the person that dictates right now or teaches what's right, what's wrong, and you mould that child, right? Despite obviously every child having their own individuality, I still believe that I think everyone has their inherent characteristics as a human, right? But to say that parenting doesn't have a huge amount to do with it, it would be silly,
Yeah, because it's your duty to guide and keep them safe, right? So
correct.
Yeah.
Well, you can almost see it like a bunch of jugs, right? Like as in you're pouring water into a jug that's your kid. At some point, somebody's pouring in something that pollutes it. Whose role is it to decontaminate that person? And I think what we're talking about, let's say with wellness and therapeutic language, is like, at best, I think the great thing about a transaction with a therapist and not with a parent in terms of like how you offload problems is you pay money, you can have a one-way sort of mud chute of just pouring all the pollutants out to one person. That actually it doesn't really affect them. They'll take on a bit of the kind of load and understanding, but ultimately they can box it up, put it away, and so it's like the calculus of it works really nicely because it kind of rounds down to zero. There's like zero pass through of that problem. Whereas between parents and children, you suddenly form dynamics, or between friends, it can get overcomplicated. So we all just sort of need to work out, and you can have that with innate, like inanimate things as well, right? Like going and doing a gym session shouldn't really affect anybody else. You should be able to just offload pressure and stress in that environment, shut the door, walk away, and so actually all that stress and pressure has gone in, and we've just decontaminated it. And to you, Anna, actually, after dealing with a therapist, what changes did you make?
I didn't make like physical changes. I understood why I did certain things and why I was the way I was, which I didn't. I had zero understanding of it. That enabled me to decipher when I'm gonna sort of just triggers. I was able to start to figure out, okay, this is not good for me, or this is. It's like when you go through what's it called, allergy test, and you go through life, you don't know what actually makes you, what is, because if you don't have like an obvious allergy, you eat something, you say, oh, my belly hurts, but I don't know what it is, but you just carry on. Next time you're going to eat again, and you just carry on, and then you might have a rush, and you think, well, why do I have a rush? But anyway, I don't know what it is. Could be milk. But once I was able to decipher, actually, this makes me feel certain way. I was able to say no. I was able to deal with the outside world without imposing my own personal traumas or things I was insecure about. Insecurities was probably the issue. But it just made me lighter, and I was able to help others when things were tough. But it doesn't change anything. Still, even though you go through therapy, if there are triggers and things that you still haven't dealt with, which I probably need to go back some point, but I still feel there's points I'm really, really, really that really have to manage my emotions.
I was going to say that.
Yeah,
you had a better emotional guidance system.
Yeah, but still have to manage it. It's like you have a, yeah, it's just going through life thinking, okay, this triggers me.
Yeah. I'm
not cured from it, but I still need to, I know I need to perhaps move away from it and then kind of work on it.
You can process it, right?
It's still so much, but it comes with maturity as well. Now I'm able to say, I don't like this, I like this, or this makes me feel uncomfortable, but I know why it makes me feel uncomfortable. There's something disconnected with my past that makes me feel this way. There is some people that come through to my life, and I know that I can decipher that this person shouldn't be around me, or they should be around me. I love that energy. So I think that's what therapy did for me. But some people go through life and never leave therapy, and others are able to pop in and out of it. And I think for me it's that. But it was a great experience. It was the best thing I ever done. But I remember a couple of weeks ago I was in a dinner with some friends, and then I've met someone that she's so secure. She knows it all. She seems perfect in terms of my mind. I was like, wow, she knows what she wants. She's very comfortable with her life and who she is. And when I suggested, I said, oh, did you go therapy? She was like, no.
Yeah,
like,
red flag.
And then she as if I had attacked her. I was like, no, it's not a bad thing. It's people go through therapy. Why is it not accepted in the UK as much as accepted in America? America's like going therapy is like going to the gym or eating a healthy meal. In England, there's still there's a negative, there's a stigma here with it. The way she felt attacked, and I was like, okay,
I don't know if you've seen all the keep calm and carry on mugs, but I think that's probably a byproduct of the British psyche.
Yeah,
repression.
Yes.
We don't dance unless we've drunk too much. There's lots of things.
You don't talk about emotions as well, right? Never show emotion.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think the poster child for that is the kind of royal family and the ability to sweep stuff under the carpet and pretend everything's okay, right?
Yeah.
So, Anna, you said obviously about knowing yourself and self-reflection, right? So, would you say that the most important thing that's helped you kind of get through it is just kind of understanding who you are and because I think for me as well it's the same thing. Like, you just understand, once you understand who you are and what you like, what you don't like, and what triggers you and everything else, you almost feel invincible, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
It's cartography, right? It's like being shown a map of the world, but of your internal world, and so you don't know all the places, but you've at least got like location points for them.
Yes.
Exactly, because the way I see it is that if I know myself well enough, it doesn't matter what Anna says, Michael says, Ed says about me, because I already know that. You can take that on and be like, yeah, you're right, right.
Yeah,
Whereas if you don't take that time to discover self-discovery and self-understanding, a bit like when you went to first therapy, you're like, am I like?
Yeah.
I've got this. Like,
Yeah.
I'm a narcissist. Like, sorry, not you.
Yeah.
I didn't.
No, she said that I have low self-esteem, and I said, do I? I thought I was
you
really
always feel
confident. Yeah,
this is what I mean.
People think I'm really confident. People think I'm really an extrovert.
That's the mask, right?
And then she was like, no, actually, I know you've got huge issues with self-esteem, low self-esteem. And I was like, do I?
And
then I had to go back and think, I do. I made loads of decisions because of my low self-esteem. I would be my imposter syndrome.
Yes, imposter syndrome.
I had huge imposter syndrome. When I was able to decipher, okay, this is I feel uncomfortable in this room. It's because of this, and I was like, I just have to go for it.
Get over it. Yeah.
So you also mentioned about being able to say no to things, right?
Yes.
Now, I went through a stage because my mentor spoke to me about this. He said, Brendan, because I was saying no to a lot of things. That's before I experienced them. And do you believe that you have to say yes to a lot of things before you can say no?
You don't say yes to heroin, right? Do you know what I mean? Like,
sorry, within reason.
Yeah, like as in, I
reason.
think there's definitely points of working out where your resistance and comfort point meets reality. Because you're right, like you may go, I don't mind driving in a car at 200 miles an hour. I may go, once it's got to 160, I'm feeling pretty uncomfortable.
160.
Yeah.
80.
Yeah, exactly. Well, for instance, like example, I had a motorbike for a while. I fell off it and broke my leg, and I was like, enough motorbike for me. Some people will be on motorbikes till the day they die. They'll be safe as houses.
Yeah.
They'll never have a bad experience with it, and they can handle that level of.
Did you need to get back on the horse though?
I did. I got back on it after my leg healed, and it was never. It's never the same.
Yeah. You were nervous.
You're like pushing yourself. I mean, it's one of the most amazing experiences ever, but it's not for the faint-hearted.
Yeah.
No.
Brendan, did you say no as a default? For you, was it?
I think for me, I was saying no because I didn't really. So, for example, people would be like, "Oh, Brendan, let's go out tonight," and because I was a bit younger, right?
Yeah.
So everyone's going clubbing at this time. I was like,
no.
I'd rather sit at home.
But
Yeah.
had you already formed like a mental picture in your head and thought through what the evening was going to be?
Of course, yeah. Like,
Okay, so you.
So for me, I don't drink, right? Well, I very rarely drink.
Yeah, me too. I don't drink.
And it's like
I don't drink.
I don't drink much.
I do drink.
I'll drink on special occasion for a good friend, right?
Yeah.
If we're at like a really big occasion, I'll have a 1 or 2 drinks, but I'd never go like blackout drunk.
Yeah.
Never been there. I don't think I ever will because I don't enjoy the taste of alcohol anyway.
Yeah.
But then when you're at uni and everyone's there and you're doing it, I'm just like, why do I want to be a part of that? I love dancing, right? So the
Yeah.
one part of the program I do enjoy is dancing to music.
Mm.
Yeah.
But then you're in that environment where everyone's getting drunk, everyone's going to that limit, of pushing themselves to the point. When I say limit, like, what's the hardest drug I can take and not get addicted? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you're pushing
Yeah.
boundaries all the time. What's the
Yeah.
highest high I can get? And you see them in their lowest lows. Like, I don't want
Yeah.
under that.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
interesting though, isn't it? Like when you go dancing, you go, hey, I just enjoy going dancing. What you're actually surrounded by is potentially a bunch of people going, we're too insecure to dance until we drink this amount of alcohol, which you don't even need to then go and do the thing that you'd have done
Yeah.
in the first place and enjoyed anyway. So it's
Yeah.
like you're actually being governed by like the net sum insecurity of the group rather than, you know, sometimes it is just fun and people want to kind of get on that bandwagon or delegate responsibility for their actions. But I do think like too much resistance to the experiences of life. So do you know what I mean? Either you needed to not think about it and just go, nah, no
No,
FOMO, no think about it.
That's what I was going to say. Like, just listening to what he's saying, he's based at the time going out on how people are doing their thing, and that's what I don't like. I went out for the music. Do you see what I
Yes,
mean?
so did I.
And then the girls, just to see the girls and just be like, oh. So that's what I went out for. They were my two main things.
Not
And
just
then
to see the girls.
The
was it?
third thing was, the third thing also was, I live in North London. We might go somewhere central and you're seeing friends or family from South London and it's just a community. And if you go to that common rave all the time, you know that community group's going to always be there. That was it for me. It was just a barrel of laughs to get out of the house. So the alcohol didn't matter. So and the people doing what they're doing, that's their business.
Absolutely.
And that's so, yeah, back to your point. It was almost like you didn't need to preempt what was going to happen to get the experience. But what you've done is preempt, shut off the avenue and say, I'm happy here and that's where I'm going to stay. And then something else would happen. And then before you know it, you're actually just isolated in your own place.
It's kind of stressful
No.
or stressful, right?
But I think with you, Brendan, when you asked me when I asked you what was your default answer, is always no. My default answer was always yes.
Yeah.
So I used to be surrounded by people that, you know, I don't drink alcohol or do drugs or anything like that, but people that used to get high constantly and stuff. But I used to feel so isolated within that world that I started to feel, but I would still say yes. I don't quite enjoy it. I don't feel comfortable. I'm on my own with my thoughts because everyone is sort of drunk or they're having a good time on their own accord, no judgment. But I wasn't. I was just watching them, and
You're like the only sober person.
yeah,
in the room you
and then
like.
it was constantly me and I started. But I think also enabled me to start to say no. Therapy enabled me to say, actually, I don't want to be friends with that individual. That person is not good for me. Why am I around that individual for so many years when we are so different and all you do is like, it's just not good. Like, I used to be able to be around narcissistic people, when around different kind of individuals, good or bad, because I had my own. I always used to be in my own world and stuff. But I used to tolerate so much, to the point that therapy enabled me to say no. I'm not no anymore. I'm gonna say no for once, and that's how I start falling out with loads of individuals and feeling I don't think you're good for me. I don't think you're good.
Which is fair.
I think I love you, but I'm gonna love you from afar, sort of thing.
I think
did
that's
a Michael.
All roads lead to Michael.
All roads lead to Michael.
But yeah, I think because you had that yes moment, you then knew yourself well enough to be able to say no.
Exactly.
I think I defaulted to no a bit earlier, right?
Okay.
Because I was just like, whether it's insecurity, whether it's social anxiety, I don't think it's social. I don't know what it was back then.
Yeah, of course.
But there's reasons I was saying no to a lot of things, right? Whether that's hanging out with family, like cousins, whether that's going out, whether that's whatever it may be. I was so comfortable within my own space and just being me and doing my own thing that I was like, I can't really be asked to do that. So I was like, I was saying no to a lot. But then that really closed me off from a lot of experience that I could have had. Not because I never had FOMO or anything like that. I was like, whatever, they do their thing, I'll do my thing. But because of that, I was speaking to my mentor all the time. He's like, Brendan, you're in your own bubble. You sit there, write music, you do your own thing. But then he said, you can't write music without life experience. You can't do what you want to. You can't say no when you've not said yes before. Like, obviously, there's lines, not heroin. Like, but I think then I had to go through a year. I went basically through a year of saying yes to anything that sounded potentially like I was only doing it because I was being...
You had that no feeling, and then you thought, right, this is something I should say yes to.
Yeah, so there was that point of like, normally I'd be like, oh, I can't really be asked to do that.
Yeah.
And I thought, Brendan, actually, you're probably going to enjoy it when you get there.
Yeah.
Say yes and just do it. And then, so I did that for like a year, and I was saying yes to a lot of things, right? It's a majority of like social things, and I was like, and it really helps me.
Of course.
It made me a happier person, right?
It does, yeah.
But then I've now got to a point where I can say no to things I know I'm not going to enjoy.
Yes.
And that's what kind of what I was alluding to, of saying,
that's great.
Would you have been able to say no before you already understood what yeses felt like?
No.
So this is what they say is, when you know what you don't want, you know what you do want.
Correct.
But what happens is those same people, if you ask them what they do want, they'll say, I don't know.
They get angry. So I was guilty of this myself. Like, my partner said to me, I was literally like, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. And she's like, but what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I know what I don't want to do. And then you just have to say stop. And you go, well, reverse it. What am I saying I actually want in this? If I didn't feel that I'd feel guilty for asking for it, if I didn't feel that I'd feel judged for asking for it. And you're right, like your first reaction is to be defensive. Like, I just told you what I don't want. It's like, that's not telling me what you do want. That's not
what you do want.
Positive.
And that's what it is. A lot of people lean to the negative all the time without looking at the positive outlook. Because if you know what you don't want and you've never experienced it, which is kind of wild anyway, then you should actually know what you do want. But you don't.
So
because
you've not experienced what you don't want.
Because you've not experienced what you don't want.
And it's funny, I think that applies to a lot of things, right?
It does,
whether that's work, whether that's...
life, right?
So, like, for example, for me, a big one's relationships. You think you know what you want, but then you go through these relationships and you don't know... For example, no one in a toxic relationship knows they're in one until it's too late.
Yeah.
That's so true of so many things, of just like, when you're inside the
bubble,
you do not know you're in the fish bowl.
You kind of just pretend it doesn't, like, all the negative just doesn't happen, even though you know you got all the signs, right? Everyone's telling you it's a bad place for you to be, and you just think, I get that, and they're like, learn from our mistakes. And what I've realised in life is actually, I was thinking about my little cousin. I was like, I need to help her realise what her potential could be. But I was thinking at 18, I didn't care. And would I listen to my older cousin? Probably not.
But you know what, though? And I will say this. I will say this. As much as you say that, I think the important thing is to plant those seeds.
Correct.
Because, as the old saying goes, if you can read a book and you pass it to somebody who can't read, but you choose to ignore that, then you're worse than the person who can't read. And that's what that notion is. Like, at 18, did I care? I'm going to keep this information to myself. But really, your job's just to plant the seeds. And their job, if it manifests, waters, somebody else might come in and say it, and then it does its thing.
They will look back and say, oh, Brendan said something that day that changed something. It might change something.
And it might not even be they remembered Brendan told them because it's planted, it's at the back.
Yeah, yeah.
And it just like, they might feel it's their idea.
And that's
but the
fine.
seed has to be planted.
You know,
Yeah.
I don't mind. Yeah, that doesn't bother me. It's just like, as long as I can help in some sort of manner, it's great. But then, as I said, a lot of the times when you're in it, you don't
realise.
You don't realise,
Yeah.
right? So whether that's positive or negative sometimes. So as I said, for me, I've had to go through rough relationships to now know what a good one is.
Yeah.
You know, and I think
if you
a lot of people have to do
if you one
that.
shot at it and got the first one amazing, you would not have even appreciated it, right?
Correct.
No, exactly,
That's
because
true.
you don't even know
That's
you had
true.
it good.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't even know you had it.
And then you go to the next one, you're like, right, good.
Yeah, exactly. And you really like, you kind of in a way really envy people who like bumble through a couple of failed teenage relationships, have like a few non-starts at university, and then meet somebody great and go, I'm great.
Yeah.
It's way more difficult when you like do it all arse backwards.
Yeah.
Of course, but as I said, to know what you want, you kind of need to know. It was what you said.
Don't want,
You've also got to be offering like a sense of coherence, right? And we don't offer that. Like in your, early dating life, you're not presenting yourself to your future partner going, I know who I am. You're on a journey as well, so you don't want the photograph taken of you. And this is a big part of where I felt kind of commitment phobic, because each relationship was like a photograph of who you were at that time and what you were. So it's Brendan the musician, or it's Brendan the dancer, and you kind of get stuck to that identity. And if you want to start getting rid of it, you're like, the easiest thing to do is get rid of the relationship and rebuild yourself anew.
But then the flip side of that is, because you're right, if that snapshot was present then, 6 years later, you might have evolved and grown, and you might actually outgrow the partner.
Yeah.
And that's the danger of shifting personalities on characters to becoming who you truly feel you are.
Yeah.
And you find yourself drifting apart.
Yeah.
So they may have served their purpose too. And I don't think many people appreciate that even partners can serve their purpose and it can come to a natural end, as opposed to hanging on just for the sake of love, or what you consider love to be.
Yeah.
So it's
That-
dangerous.
I'm just being super grateful for the amount of time you're given. I've got the question for all three of you, which I think is like, to me, I think is so pivotal to people's mental wellness, is how did you address and or get rid of, or maybe still plagued by, the inner critic? Because I think that's central to so many people's sense of why they let themselves get treated a certain way. And it's a pervasive voice in your head that has little to no value when it's just ripping into you. And I'd be interested to know what your experiences with that. I know what mine was.
Go for it.
Go for it.
You want me to go?
Go for
When
it.
I became you have this sort of internal persecution mechanism that almost shields you from the criticism before it even makes its way to your door. If somebody goes, you're a piece of shit, you go, sure, I've already been telling myself that for the last 2 years. You can't, you're a failure, you're an imposter. Yeah, I get it. You join the bandwagon, I'll be on the sides agreeing with you.
Yeah.
And that's a place of almost like self-protection, I think, in relation to bad circumstances. But for me, it went silent one day. It never came back.
I mean, I'm still...
What do the universe just stop saying that to you? And then
I was walking up the stairs in my flat, and maybe it was like 2021 or something. I don't know exactly what happened. And it was because something genuinely dangerous happened in my life, where I was like, that's what feeling like a victim actually feels like. And I thought, life can find you and turn you into an actual victim of threat of violence or this, that, the other. It'll do it, and you won't be in control of that. So you may as well stop attacking yourself in the interim, because it will still find you. So leave space for those moments, and then just went like that. And my hand just went silent.
I never attacked myself.
no, I agree. I did attack myself for many years. So
And, go for it. Go on. Tell your story.
no.
But
I was going to say.
you never had
never
that voice just
I
going,
never-
"Hey, Michael, you're lazy. Hey, Michael, why are you doing this?"
I've been told I'm rude all my life. All my life, you're rude. And I'm like, but I was one of those children that was cheeky, feisty, funny. But my what I would consider my imperfection was I was always shorter than my peers, because I was always around older people, and they were more stronger, more powerful. So at sports, they were always better. So I always had that thing where I'm like, I need to just try harder because I'm just not good enough. Right? So that would have been my inner voice saying, you're just not good enough. But it went when success came, when I was just good enough. And that was it for me. So I think mine was woven through sport. So in terms of the rudeness thing, because I was fueled through sports and just having a good community of people, I found I used my rudeness as my power, so I then became the class clown.
But so you did have it. So
No,
it
but,
just
yeah, but I'm just saying it kind of,
disappeared.
it was so young, it weren't more telling myself the negative so much. I was just cheeky anyway, I just didn't care. So it's probably there, definitely, as I get older into different rooms. But I just think through education and understanding and conversation, it probably evaporated quicker through different peaks. So it's always there, it's just, it gets shrunk. And then as an elder, I'm like, I still get told I'm rude now. I'm like, that's because you just got a lack of IQ. Like, keep up.
Like
Just keep up. Like, I'm not rude, I'm direct. You don't like it, keep up.
But rude's good in a way because it's an active choice in how you interface with the world, right? Whereas I think some people, when they try and be compliant, nice, what you could say is, I've been nice to that person. What you could actually think in your head is, I'm a coward for not telling them to do one.
Yeah.
And this can happen in any situations where you're pressured too much. I think, again, more happened when I was younger, and you go, why did I stick up for that? Or why did I do that? And it's good because you go in your head, you go, because you're weak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that,
yeah.
and that could happen in any situation, right?
To be fair, that voice is a killer, actually.
It goes, you know what, like tap, tap, tap. You know why you didn't stand up to those like 6'3" guys? Because you're a coward, and you're like, or because I wanted to, just get home. I wasn't, whatever. But
do you know what?
I wanted to fit in. And
do you know what that inner voice is, actually? I get it all the time, man.
Fine.
It's when I'm sitting down and I'll get in trouble with my partner or a person or whoever, one of my friends, and I'm getting told off about my behaviour about something, or they're just nagging, and I'm sitting there and I'm saying, why did I even do this to myself and bring myself here? Sitting down for all this nonsense. Am I crazy? Next time, watch, they're going to get it. I literally have a full-on conversation with myself, like, next time they ask me, I'm not coming. And then I'm there again.
Yeah,
right. So exactly. But part of us has always got to say we are where we are.
Yeah.
Ergo,
you're right.
We feel we deserve it. So do I deserve to be constantly berated, told off? In fact, why haven't I shut the door on this and gone?
Yeah.
No, but I think for
You're
me
right,
was once I was in hospital. It wasn't for myself; it was for a family member, and I went to my car because obviously A&E is A&E. You have to wait for hours. And I went quickly into my car, sat down, and I posted something on Instagram, and a friend responded to my post. It just was some random attack. And at that point, I was just like, you know what? Like, I didn't say it, but I wanted to say, shut the F up. Like, but I did say it in many words. Like,
why many words?
Because maybe I was still trying to be the good person. I was trying to walk away from that and still be the good. Like, when you said I'm a good person, I want to leave that person. Yeah. I want people to know that I was the good person in this story.
But who are these like mystery audience?
Exactly, because that individual would go to other people and say, I don't speak to Anna, or I don't, because it's her fault. But it's just an accumulation of years of constantly being attacked for that particular individual for absolutely no reason, and would be a random talk. And but at that point she was just like, oh, remember when you said this, remember when I helped you with this? And I was just like, but why are you mentioning this? Why this now? She's gonna watch this and she's gonna know who she is, but why?
Well, if she does,
what? And that point I was like,
let her know.
She was
message over to her.
She was that day was like, she gonna learn today. It's like, no more. That person died. Like,
it's one of those moments. You're like, Anna, look into the camera and just tell this person.
Let them know.
I meant to say, when I said all this long word, I meant to say, shut the fuck up. Like,
straight.
She should
have been direct. Sorry, rude.
That point was that was the end of that voice. That was like, no more. But also, I knew myself enough to know that I'm actually a nice person, and if you have something that you need to work on, you're projecting right now. And I kept, because I had my internal voice, I enabled that to go on for years. I was just like,
there's a really good quote, and look, it's really abrupt, but it kind of sticks in your head. And I remember reading it once. And it goes, "People pleasers are assholes."
We are, aren't we?
And it's because. and you read it and you go, oh, that's shocking, but they're nice people, and it's like, actually they allow people to get away with behaviour that will keep behaving that way, talking to other people, and so you go, in a kind of collective sense, it's a good message to digest. It doesn't mean somebody actually is, they're doing their best, but
how about you, Brendan?
In terms of
inner critic,
do you still have it, or
you definitely got the inner voice?
100%. Yeah.
Can I be as bad and say, like, you said that you had the sort of Tiger Mum experience,
Oh yeah.
do you still have
Sorry, Mum.
do you have like that kind of critic in your head and going, you know what, the need to do more?
I think I've always got the inner critic in my head saying I've got to do more, partially because of who I've surrounded myself with, right? So I've surrounded myself with people that are doing better than myself. When I say better, it's in terms of
That's
career-wise, right? In terms
That's
of
good.
overachieving. So then you're always at this point of, even if I'm doing relatively well myself, you're always at the point of you're still not doing well enough. You're not good enough, Brendan. Like, keep pushing. And it's twofold. It's great, and it also sucks because you're around people that are always up here, and you're like here. Even when you're here, you're still.
That's how I felt in track and field.
Yeah, you're still here. You're never. Not never. You're still aspiring to be here.
Yeah.
Right. So this never feels like enough. This doesn't feel enough. This doesn't feel like enough. So that it's really tough because you've always got the inner critic saying, "Brendan, you got to be more."
And even when you get there, they're already gone to.
They're now there, right? So I'm like, again, I've got to graft again, and it's been both great and crap for me. You know, it's really great in terms of it's pushed me to do more. It's pushed me to make more of my life and kind of self-reflect more and be like, Brendan, are you doing all you can do? But at the same time, as I said, you never celebrate the small wins, right? So, but that being said, I think a lot of people, I am in the fortunate space of I'm now never really settling for less, right? Which kind of leads me to the question of whether it's relationships, whether it's friendships, whether it's work, whether it's dreams. I think a big portion of people are settling for less than they could have in life. And
on that note, Brendan, that will make a good podcast.
Exactly that.